What's up? This is first episode of Artist of the Goods podcast. I'm Johnny Walker of Johnny Walker Art. Just gonna give an introduction, talk about who I am, what our lineup is, starting out for this podcast, kind of the goals on where I want to go, what I want to do with this. So I'll get this started. So this is Artist of the Goods podcast, hosted by me, Johnny Walker. What I'd like to do with this podcast is bring artists together, pinstripers, tattoo artists, sign painters, anybody from the custom culture world, answer a lot of questions that people have. I've noticed out there that you go to these forums or on Facebook, everybody's asking a lot of questions. And sometimes it's the same question, like what brush do you use? What paint do you use? How did you learn this? How do you do that? And by this podcast, I'm hoping I can bring people together and we can answer those questions. By doing the videos, we can actually show people and demonstrate on how to do these things. This podcast, we're going to have a couple different things that this podcast will be shot out to Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google Podcasts, but you'll also be able to see video on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, to name a few. The lineup that we have, I have some really good people, some really good friends. I have Rose from Custom Vanner, Mr. Oz, Elbamo, Lil Matt, City Slicker. I have Kendi from Good Girl Line and Sign, Tank Built, and Clint Davison. These are just a few people I have lined up to start out this podcast and these videos. So a little bit about myself. I grew up on a small dairy farm in Ohio. Art has always been in my life. I grew up with no cable TV, so didn't have many TV channels, anything like that. So to keep myself entertained, I drew and I painted a lot. I started out drawing from VHS tapes, Disney movies, cartoons, or we'd go to the Scholastic book fair at school, and you'd have those drawing books, and I'd always pick those up. So I've always been interested. I've always painted throughout my life, and I've always drawn. Two things I've always kept separate. I'm a 21-year veteran of the military, and I've kind of kept this world separate from my art world, and it's been two separate things. So one goal is I'd like to see what I can do and take my art into the military side, and what I can do there. I've painted a couple murals overseas on deployments, drew a couple pictures for contests over there. Another thing, about me, I started tattooing in probably 2005. I did an apprenticeship and let that go. I tattooed for a little bit. I was tattooing people where I shouldn't have been tattooing people, that kind of stuff. But eventually, I'd like to get back into it. Like I just said, I did a full apprenticeship into tattooing. I'll be retiring in a couple years, and that's where I'd like to pick up, tattooing and painting, using this podcast to travel to shows, do paint at shows and interview my friends. This idea came about for this podcast. I went to a get-together called Brushmasters Getaway, and I was completely blown away at what was there and how we all kind of got along. We would go through classes all throughout the day, and then at night we would just paint all night long, and hang out. And it was, some of these people I just met that week, and it was like we've known each other forever. That is kind of what I wanted to do with this podcast also, is bring in these people that I've met, with over in the last 4 years in pinstriping, sign painting, and talk about, our friendships and our stories, the projects we have going on, what's next, that kind of stuff. And like I said before, answer those questions that a lot of people ask, the same person over and over and over. We can answer them here and actually show demonstrations on how to do that. But back to Brushmasters, I've had a lot of help, made a lot of good friendships there. That whole concept of bringing us all together to learn, to help one another, growing up, a lot of these things were pretty quiet. You know, you thought no one wanted to share anything. If you had to kind of learn on your own. But going to this, I've learned that, you know, all you have to do is ask, and people are willing to teach you and show you how to do this. And that's what I'm offering with this. You know, you have questions, you can hit me up on Artists of the Goods, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. I'm gonna let you know who we're interviewing, so you know, send me those messages. I can ask those questions, and hopefully we can do this and get together. Like I said, this is my first episode, so this is the introduction. You know, to get this podcast out there, to get it out to Apple Podcast, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. So if you have any questions, feel free to shoot them up to my Instagram. Like I said, I'm running 2 videos right now, and I look forward to working with you guys later on.